I've heard all about her, and right now this is the first time I've seen her in person. Ginger is here this evening. You may have seen the little article in our paper regarding a Cattaraugus County Legislator who's coming to address us. She is on the front lines of making sure counties acknowledge and obey the Constitution. She is a defender of the Bill of Rights. She is so effective that she serves on the IDA in Cattaraugus County. In our county, we feel like almost they work against us, but her voice is heard so well that when it comes to big solar and wind, it's like the signs on the county line say, "You're not welcome here." That's how effective she has been.
Well, it sure looks like this is a very constitutional county, too.
Yeah.
Let me put down my things. So I didn't really prepare. Can you hear me fine without this? No? Okay. So there I go. Is that better? Yeah. Okay. I didn't really prepare a lot of remarks. I have been talking to many groups across New York State. It's amazing to me. There's enclaves of patriots, really mainly in upstate New York. Not a lot of patriots down in the lower New York area, but it's very heartening to come to groups, and I find that I have to go myself once a month to a group. There's a group that meets in Olean. I don't know if anyone's heard of it. It's called the Right Thinkers. Yep. They're amazing. So last night was our get-together. And it's just wonderful to be in a room of 100 to 150 people who think like you. You're not in an echo chamber of crazy democratic, zealot, progressive liberal nonsense that makes you start to think that you're going a little crazy. Right. And I certainly hear it. I work in the city of Buffalo. They're just so far gone there. It's really quite extraordinary. So I like coming home to Cat County, where I feel that there is a very strong network of Republican and conservative thinkers. I love going to that group. I would encourage anyone to take the 1-hour drive. It's once a month, and we have great speakers. Last night it was Nicholas Waddy, who's a professor, I think, at Adelphia, and a gentleman who's over 90 years old who survived Nazi war camps and can speak firsthand about totalitarianism and dictatorship and non-benevolent despots, and he was really pretty extraordinary. We were supposed to have Nick Langworthy. I imagine you have signs for him. Oh, maybe he's not your district. Is he? Okay, so.
We can't get any signs.
Really? My husband is the Republican chair in Cat County, and he will get you signs. We have hundreds of them. So tell me who to coordinate with here, and I'll get them for you. Great. You just give me your information. I'm going to connect you to him, and he'll drive them down to you. So Nick Langworthy was supposed to speak. His wife is 8.5 months pregnant. Last night she ended up having a tremendous high blood pressure problem, and they thought she was preeclamptic, so they rushed her to the emergency room. He had to cancel, but he sent Joe Sepolinsky in his stead, who's currently serving that 4-month recess term. And there was also Brenda Hansen, who many of you probably know. She's really the founder of Freedom Thinkers in Delavan, New York. She meets in the basement of a church. And what's really neat about these groups, I guess your group would be no different, is it kind of came out of the COVID era. You know, people meeting, wanting to get together, feeling very isolated, and wanting to understand that the world was not ending. And so the Right Thinkers themselves formed, they were meeting in secret, and they wouldn't let anyone record, and they were very careful about who was permitted into the group. I thought I would share with you, they asked questions of the panelists, and I thought just to kind of get people's mindset in the right frame of mind tonight, I wanted to share with you one of the questions that was asked the panelists, because I found it to be very profound, and I brought them here. There were 6 questions. Each panelist is given, I don't know, a few minutes to answer them. Some take longer than they're supposed to, and some are shorter. So this is question 4. The term civil war is being tossed around in the media. Now, I don't know which media, because I only listen to Fox News. I don't listen to the other crazies. Hey. But I will tell you, interestingly, one of the points made by the panelists last night is we need to be listening to CNN. We need to turn on MSNBC. And we need to, even though it's so painful and makes you want to vomit, you need to spend at least an hour a day finding out what other people are being fed. Because without knowing that, you're in no position to really fight it. So they say, as liberals see it, the Civil War would be between MAGA Republicans, Make America Great Again Republicans, and everyone else, because MAGA Republicans are crazy and everyone else is civilized. Is there a real civil war brewing? Who would it be between? Who wants one and who doesn't want one? Lastly, who would win? And what are some of the potential consequences? This by far was the most fascinating question of the evening, because it really varied from people on the panel thinking that, in particular, Nicholas Waddy, who's very brilliant, but he filled me full of despair last night, because he believes that there's not enough good-minded thinking patriots who would be willing to take up arms and to defend our freedoms that our forefathers fought so hard for. I told him he needs to spend more time in my neck of the woods, where people are very much about making sure government doesn't overreach its bounds. So I found that to be a fascinating question. I think it would be great for all you folks if you ever want to take a trip up there, gather a few folks, get into the car, drive an hour, and come share some sociable time with people who think like you think. So I was handed some questions. I mean, I'm prepared to talk about a lot of things, but I can also answer questions. I'm not an expert on everything. It's very difficult to keep up, particularly in this world of democratic administrative legislation. We have the growth of what is an administrative state. An administrative state is one where it just becomes all powerful, and it grows and grows. It adds more bodies, more bureaucrats, and those bureaucrats are civil servants. So even when you have a change of power at the very highest echelon, the President of the United States, who gets to put in all sorts of cabinet members and appoint heads of agencies, it takes a long time for that head of agency to really have an impact on the bureaucrats who have been solidly walking along in the same direction for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. We see it in the FBI, right? Yeah. It's just impossible to kind of turn that around overnight. It's going to take a sustained government of Republicans and of conservatives to really make a dent in those institutions. And so that means the most important thing we can all do is vote. And we have to get out the vote. The Democrats are amazing at it. They're amazing at harvesting votes. They're amazing at creating votes. You can go visit the cemetery where their voting base is. It is really spectacular efforts that they go to bring in the vote, and that is why they have been successful. Now, of course, they're importing a lot of illegal aliens who New York City is handing the vote to, and the whole idea is to secure successive governments of progressive liberals and to slowly, bleed us out. So if we look around this room, what is missing in this room? Young people. The youth. You're exactly right. So right now, the Democrats and the progressive liberals knew exactly what they were doing 30 years ago. What did they do? They infiltrated the schools. And one of the most amazing points made last night by Nicholas Waddy in the presentation was that the public school system is so broke, it is so far gone, that we just simply need to dismantle it and start over. It's just, there's no repairing it. The institution is, just completely corrupt, and it has now, gone kind of over the edge. And I know that it's very difficult to get public school teachers, and people say, well, why is that? Do you really have to ask yourself why? Even people coming out of school who may not have that mindset, they get put into that scenario, and they're told that if they don't teach a certain way, if they don't imbue the students with a certain subject matter and thoughts and ideals, that they're not welcome in the school, and they get brought up on charges and all sorts of other things. I know Karen and her husband had followed one of those cases pretty heavily, and it was really tragic. What was happening to that person who decided to speak out against what she felt, was really wrongful type of conduct on the part of the school administration and on the part of the government imposing mandates, on people. So I think my sense of, I myself have hope. That's why I continue to show up. That's why I continue to try to help people. I know in our legislature, we were able to pass recently 2 resolutions. Now, resolutions are not the force of law, but remember, county legislatures really don't have an awful lot of power. We have control over certain things, but really what has happened to us, and I've only been a county legislator for now 3 years, is that we have become, and I'm not going to use the word corrupted, we have become infested with this idea that we have unfunded mandates from the state government. So when I became a county legislator, and the administrator, the county administrator, sat all of us down, all of us newbies, and he held up a very big picture of a dollar bill. And he said, of this dollar bill, which is a tax dollar, 83 cents of it goes to unfunded New York State mandates from, you know, what we have to do with school lunches, what kind of aides we have to hire in the nursing home, exactly, all of those programs, you know, those feel-good social programs, and very little is left for truly the work that government should be doing, which is building roads and infrastructure and the like, not, you know, administering a whole bunch of, you know, feel-good programs and then not being funded for them. So one of our experiences coming out of COVID, our county runs 2 nursing homes. And so one of the first things we faced as a county were the mandated vaccines. And we have in our county about 50% unvaccinated people by choice, whether it be Amish, whether they be people who don't trust the government, whether they be people who like to make decisions about their own bodily autonomy, whatever it may be, we had a lot of people who were resistant, and that included our workforce. And so we were facing the possibility of having 50% of our workforce potentially being forced to choose between their livelihood and providing for their families and getting a mandated vaccine. You know, ultimately, when we passed the constitutional county resolution, we brought a lawsuit against the state of New York. The day after we brought the lawsuit against the state of New York, and we had great facts, I actually thought we were going to win, and I'll tell you why we didn't win, what happened, which will probably not shock you. The state of New York showed up in our nursing homes, and they demanded copies of every single religious exemption that our workers had. I mean, tell me that's not a threat, a shot across the bow, incredibly intimidating, your government showing up and saying, we want copies of all your exemptions. This is back when they allowed the religious exemption. Then they stopped the religious exemption. There were only medical exemptions. And I heard from doctors in our county that they were being threatened by the Department of Health not to grant medical exemptions, only in very severe circumstances. So their livelihoods were threatened as well. And if we now think about what's happening to Donald Trump, this is a man who was the President of the United States. It is a man, whether you like him, don't like him, love his economics, hate his tweeting, whatever it is you feel about him, he was the most powerful person in our nation, and he's extremely wealthy. And if they can do what they're doing to him now, what do you think they can do to us? Right. The average citizen, you, me. This is a turning point. It's a crisis moment in history for us, and what role we're going to allow government to play in our lives. Are we going to be the governed, or are we going to have them serve us? They're supposed to be working for us, and instead they're working on us. And we need to change that. We need to change that whole narrative, and we need to change that body politic to have a different understanding of how government should serve. And it's my hope that all of the people that you have signs for here will make that difference. Zeldin, my husband and I have done a lot of campaigning for him. We've done a lot of fundraising for him. He is not the best Republican, but he's the best we have. He's the best shot we have. He's the one who could get elected, which is why he was chosen. I like a lot of his policies. He seems to have a very good head on his shoulders. He has a huge understanding of the economic problems facing the state. He has a very good understanding of this crazy renewable energy push and what that's going to do, how it's going to devastate our grid, how it's going to impoverish people, how we're going to have energy poverty. He has a very good comprehension of that. And having daughters who are in school, he also has a good sense of what is happening, the deterioration of our public school system. So while he may be a little bit more in the middle than I might like my Republicans to be, I am solidly behind him because I think he's going to do a great job, and we need to get him elected. And the only way we're going to get him elected is by showing up in force. If every Republican who's registered to vote in the state of New York shows up to vote, we have that election. We do. The problem is we don't think our vote matters, and we stay home. We think it doesn't make a difference. And I can tell you, just in my county alone, of people who won elections by 1 and 2 votes. 1 and 2 votes. Now, there's smaller elections, county legislator, you know, but there's 4,000 people that turn out to vote. Now, think about the 4 people who said, oh, I just didn't make it there. I'm so sorry. You know, I was calling people and getting them out of bed. I'm like, you promised to vote. You know, where are you? You haven't voted.
Good example that in Georgia, last election, they elected 2 communists. It was a runoff. And many Republicans said, well, I'm not going to vote because it won't count anyway. Well, when a non-vote for your Republican is a vote for the other guy.
Absolutely.
Okay? You must show up. Hold your nose. If even it comes down to voting for the person who'll do the least damage, at least you're voting for the person who'll do the least damage. You must show up.
Because we know what the alternative is right now for the governor. We know. We've seen it. It's been writ large on even the national scale.
We have in Chautauqua County a county executive that won by 2 votes.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And you just think about, I know you know that the county executive that lost knew at least 2 people that didn't show up. And so one thing we've been employing in our elections is observers. I don't know if are people familiar with the concept of observers? Any candidate can choose an observer to be at the election site, particularly for the smaller elections. And frankly, you know, when I was canvassing for myself and campaigning, people would tell me, oh, I only vote in the presidential election. I'm like, well, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. That person has the least amount of control over your day-to-day life. I mean, you really need to get down to the state level. You need to get to your congressmen, to your assemblymen, to your state senators, your state legislators, and your county legislators. That's where the stuff happens. And I couldn't convince people, you know, to do that. But in the elections that we knew were going to be close, we deployed observers. And those observers are allowed to do a few things. They have the list of voters. So, and it's got to be someone who knows people and who's not shy and who won't let Democrats intimidate them. So it does take a special person to be an observer. But you go to the election site, you're allowed to be in the election site. You're not allowed to campaign for anyone, but you are allowed to check with the person. Like when you come in to vote, the person says, what's your name? You tell them your name, they find you in the book, right? They cross you off, they turn around the thing, now you're signing the thing. That observer is allowed to hear who the person is, find them on their list, cross them off. They're also allowed to ask the person who's receiving people into the voting area, you know, who was that? And you're allowed to also take periodic pictures of the voting list that they maintain where they sign a number. And what you can do is midway through, in my area it's a little bit harder because we don't have a good internet access and we also don't have good phone access in some of the voting things, which I think is sinful. But in areas where you have that, you just midway get a hold of the candidate's team and say, here are the 25 people who told you they were going to vote and they still haven't showed up. We need to call them. We need to email them. We need to show up and offer to drive them to the voting booths. That's the kind of stuff the Democrats do. Democrats go into the nursing homes and, you know, beat up our elderly to sign, and I saw it myself in the Machias nursing home. So back to the lawsuit that we engaged in. So we sued the state of New York. The state of New York started to intimidate us. We ended up having our case consolidated. We got a temporary restraining order, which meant that we didn't have to administer the vaccine for a period of time while that temporary restraining order was in place. Ultimately, our case got consolidated with tons of other cases, and it was consolidated with a largely Democratic political judge who ended up saying there was really no case at all, which is very difficult to believe. I myself, I'm not a constitutional scholar per se, but I certainly see a lot of the problems with forcing people to take vaccinations, particularly vaccinations that they don't feel comfortable with because there hasn't been longitudinal studies, there hasn't been a long period of time, you know, where people have been able to do that. So we ended up losing that case. As a result, we lost a lot of really good nursing home workers. I would say probably about 20 long-term employees who chose their bodily autonomy over their career. I give them a lot of credit. I think that's the kind of person who, when they stand up and do something, they're willing to kind of put their money where their mouth is, and it costs them dearly. So, and we're going to see it now. I got another telephone call from a employee of Canterbury Woods. Is anyone familiar with that facility up in Buffalo? It's an elder care life transitions community. You can own a house there, then you can go into a living assisted living. And she said, I just got this letter today from the director of the company telling us that we now have to take the new, in order to be considered fully vaccinated, we have to take the new bivalent booster. And she's like, I've worked here for 8 years. I love these residents. They're going to be incredibly sad, but there's a bunch of us that are just walking off the job. So we're going to see things happen to our healthcare system as people make these choices. And I'm not, you know, I myself have made decisions for myself. I don't care if you chose to get the vaccine, that's fine. It should be your choice, not, you know, someone telling you to have it, that you have to have it in order to earn a livelihood. And I think we're going to see, if we're already in a crisis situation with healthcare, anyone who gets transported to Ole in general, I'm an EMT with our fire department, every morning I have delay status, meaning we're deferring our patients. If I go pick up a patient on my road in the ambulance, I'm now being told to go to ECMC or to some other hospital, Bertram Chafee. So I think we're only going to see more of that, and that just harms all of us. So it's very, very troublesome. So let me look at the list of questions that Karen gave me, and I'm willing to take questions. I can't say I know the answer to everything, but I'll certainly give you my best thought. One is, what is the importance of the lawsuit against the New York State Office of Renewable Energy Siting for violations of the state's environmental standards? I mean, at this point, any lawsuit that could be brought against this conglomerate, the Public Service Commission, the Siting Board, the Office of Renewable Energy, ORIS, anything that can be done to put obstacles in the way of this blind march towards renewables as being the answer. And by renewables, it's not the good renewables. It's not nuclear, you know, it's not hydropower. We here in western upstate New York and the southern tier, we've got a lot of hydropower. Particularly in certain areas, hydropower is like 90% of our electric. We turn off hydropower to take wind into the grid. And wind, as we all know, it's unstable. It's certainly, while it's not free, even though they say the wind is free. It's very, very expensive to put up these wind turbines, and we all know, you know, what happens. Yeah, I mean, it's just a big scam. The whole thing's a big subsidy scam, and I'm very prayerful for that particular lawsuit. My town, you may have heard of Farmersville, New York. We're constantly battling there. Our town board goes between leaseholders taking control of one election and then getting tossed out, you know, in the next election by people who are opposed to the Alley Cat Wind project. So it's gone back and forth. Currently, the pro-wind people are in power, and when they were in power, they chose to withdraw the town from that lawsuit, the ORIS lawsuit. They were a plaintiff, but they're allowed to withdraw, so they did. And that's unfortunate. But there are a lot of great plaintiffs in there that have no intention on withdrawing, and we'll have to see, you know, where that goes. So what is a pilot? Payment in lieu of taxes. Are people interested in hearing about that and what that is? Okay, so these projects, these renewable energy projects, wind and solar, they are tax exempt. The state has made them tax exempt, which means when they come to a town and you're forced to deal with the blight and the noise and the visual impairment of your natural beautiful surroundings by having these projects, they get to do that tax-free. So normally when you think about your land, you pay a tax on your land, and you build a house, you improve the land, and you pay taxes based upon the improvement. Well, these are improvements that no tax is paid on. That's under the real property law. Now, the way towns can get around that is by opting out of the real property tax law 487. And so every town, every taxing jurisdiction, that's county and that's school district, has to pass an opt-out law to opt out of these projects. Otherwise, they find themselves, you know, with these projects and not making any money on them and having to suffer all of the consequences, the negative adverse impacts of the projects. So most towns that are faced with projects coming in quickly get their stuff together and they pass a law, either a solar law or a wind law, and in that is contained this opt-out provision. Once you opt out, the jurisdiction is allowed to tax the project. Up until just recently, you could tax it at full value. So if someone built a $500 million project, think about the tax dollars that would come in. Well, the secret is no developer can afford to pay that, so they just don't build the project, right? If you're going to tax it fully. So they try to get around that by going to the Industrial Development Agency and by asking for a pilot, a payment in lieu of taxes. And the IDA purchases and leases back the facility to the developer. You can start to see part of the whole big, circle of your taxpayer dollars, kind of going round and round and round. And they offer them a 20-year abatement of property taxes in lieu of a payment that is a fraction of what the town or the county or the school district would normally get. Then the developer approaches the town and enters into host community agreements where they peel off some minuscule portion of the many millions of dollars they're making in federal and state subsidies and through NYSERDA and give it back to the poor town to reward them for hosting the project. Of course, you remember every host needs a parasite, so that's a parasitic host relationship that's going on there. So many IDAs, I know my IDA in particular, and one of the reasons I ran for county legislature, actually the main reason, was because I was fighting the Alley Cat Wind project, and I quickly saw that the lower towns were not really going to be making much of a difference. I would really need to get to the county, and once I got in the legislature, I'd have to get myself appointed to the IDA where I could really formulate policy and try to make a difference. And look at these projects very hard. Do they really bring economic development that the developers say? Do they really bring the jobs, the permanent jobs that IDAs are supposed to be concerned with? Not the 4 months of construction that turns everyone's life upside down, but real jobs that are not just full-time equivalents, but with benefits, etc. And so I did do that. I had to make a lot of political deals to get myself onto the IDA, but it was important enough for me to do it. And I started to look at our policies. We have policies, all IDAs have them, they're called UTEPs, Uniform Tax Exemption Policies. And they set the policy for how the IDA will look at projects and how they will offer benefits and under what circumstances they will offer benefits. And we made some changes to our UTEPs to assure that projects that were coming to us with applications would be making promises about local labor. And if they didn't fulfill promises on local labor, we would claw back the money. And they would make promises on how they would spend the money in the community. And if they didn't do that, we would claw it back, etc. We also had some requirements. If they're going to put in an application, they have to get permission from the town board. And because I know the town boards can be corrupted, having had that experience myself, I asked to have a provision in that it also should enjoy widespread community support. Because that, to me, if you have in our community, we have 20% Amish. They don't vote. And the Amish do not want the project, yet they're not reflected on that town board. Nobody's looking out for their interests. And there's lots of other people that even haven't voted. They should be voting, but they're not. So in these pilot arrangements, these projects cannot happen without a pilot because they're not going to pay full taxes. And so as long as you can control your county legislature and your county legislature can control your IDA can decide not to give pilots to projects that they don't think really fulfill the economic destiny that they promise. Once this happened, and we did this in our county, and it became pretty clear to our developer that they were not going to be getting probably a pilot, or at least be having trouble in getting a pilot, they went to the governor, who at the time was Governor Cuomo, and they put into the budget a way around the IDA, which is to, I mean, really, it's pretty amazing. Like in this fight that we've had, anything we've done has been met through backdoor dealings with a higher government, form. So in the budget, which of course you all know, 3 people make the budget. It's passed in the stealth of night. Nobody ever knows what's in it. This is how our state works and has worked for, many, many years. They put in a couple things. They donated essentially to the Alley Cat Wind Project and to other wind projects state land. This is your land. This is land that's owned by the state. They have now given it to a private developer to put wind turbine components up in state parks. Reprehensible. They also granted them the right to circumvent the IDA and to enter into pilot agreements directly with municipalities and the taxing jurisdictions. So if you happen to have a taxing jurisdiction that is in the pocket of the developer, you know, they can get around that. I don't think that's very attractive to developers. And my own sense is that they're very resistant to it because you have to kind of go hat in hand to all these different taxing jurisdictions and try to strike a deal. So that may be one of the reasons why our project is still kind of limping along and hasn't really made a lot of great strides. But there are other projects too, and I know you have projects down here in this county that are, you know, one that's been built and others that are kind of in the queue. And if Ms. Hochul gets her way, every inch of upstate New York is going to be covered, littered with wind turbines and solar panels. I don't really see any way around it. There's no way that the state could deliver on its renewable agenda without corrupting and really industrializing, you know, all of our rural communities. Yes?
My concern is the danger to the birds, the animals, even to people. Is there any way to, I don't know, make it better known or to hold them accountable for the damage that they are doing? That includes solar too, but your wind, I mean, you've got your bald eagles, you've got, we don't want to lose, I mean, if they put things in the lake, then our fish.
The whole fishing industry is impacted, and you can dredge up all that sludge from the bottom after Lake Erie was a dead lake and now it's a beautiful lake, right?
Yeah, and is Peter fighting any of this? I mean, they should be.
No, they're on board with the other side.
They should be fighting.
The Sierra Club,
They're all sold out.
the Sierra Club has all renewable developers sitting on their board of directors who give them buku bucks, and they are 100% in favor of this agenda. We have lost that war. I want to answer your question, then I'll answer your question. Oh, sure.
What about people? They get sick too.
Yes, yeah. So there's a long answer and a short answer to that very provocative question. The short answer is it's going to be very difficult to hold them accountable. And the reason for that is our government is in bed with them, and our government has created the rules. And when they create the rules, the playing field, and the game, there's not much the average citizen can do. We've fought those fights. We've been at the Article 10 hearing boards. I sat with that project where the developer's expert testified that not a single bald eagle would be killed in the 20-plus year lifespan of the project, despite the fact that there is a bald eagle's nest that produces fledglings every year right in the middle of the project. Even the DEC, who's in bed with the developer, could not hold their nose for that lie. And the DEC's own expert said, no, 41 bald eagles will be killed by this project. And they get a take permit for it. Yeah. So they get to kill 41 bald eagles, however many golden eagles, red-tailed hawks, you name it. And the problem is, from an accountability standpoint, the experts can get away with a lot of this stuff because where are these wind turbines located? On private property. You and I can't go and scout for carcasses of dead birds on private property. So the developer goes, they've got the lease, they employ some of these full-time jobs that they like to tell us about are dead bird picker-uppers. And they deploy them to go out and count the carcasses, collect the carcasses, they put them in refrigerators, the DEC comes and look at them, and this is all sanctioned. So it's all a big, you know, just a big, yeah. And I think ORIS is even worse because at least in Article 10, that was the process by which a large, super large project of 25 megawatts or more would get approved by the state. The citizens had a voice. We would get money from the developer to hire experts. Didn't really make a difference because they will back into whatever decision they want, which is for the project, but at least you make them look bad in the process, right? Now we've gone to ORIS, which, you know, with this lawsuit that's against it, ORIS is basically a rubber stamp for these projects. There's no public participation or very little public participation, certainly not the kind of money that was available under Article 10 to hire legitimate, excellent experts to refute some of the absolute bullshit that comes out of the experts' mouths of these developers. And they're all, it's the same experts. They just get trotted out in each different one. They go to Cassadaga, now they're in Alley-Cat, now they're in Ball Hill, now they're over here. It's the same old experts over and over saying these projects are great, no one will die, no one will be injured, no one will be harmed.
The children that live near a certain radius, I mean, isn't that damaging, the windmills?
So we had experts, at least in our hearing, that I thought produced very profound and very accurate testimony about the impact of noise. And even the Department of Health, again, in bed with the developer, held their nose, but produced a letter saying, this project will be highly annoying to, I think it was up to 30%. Highly annoying. And then they went on to say, people who are highly annoyed have adverse health impacts. It just completely makes sense, doesn't it? When you're constantly under stress, you're upset all the time, your blood pressure goes up, you get all sorts of digestion problems. I mean, it just makes sense. So even the Department of Health, it's a 1 or 2 page letter, and it said this project will result in a certain percentage of people living in the project community being highly annoyed, and they will experience adverse health impacts. Does our government care about that? No, not at all.
I had, last month I did a presentation for Cautile Citizens Against Wind Turbines in Lake Erie. It operates out of Buffalo, Hamburg. And I opened the presentation with this. There's a company called Pacific Corp in Oregon, electrical generation company. They were taken to court by, they have all kinds of generation, including lots of windmills, which they get much in the way of subsidies for.
Sure.
Okay. They killed 38 golden eagles up there that were known.
That were known.
EPA took them to court, and they charged them $2.5 million for killing these eagles. Now here's the problem. That's $66,000 per eagle, something like that. But the $2.5 million represents 1/10% of the subsidies they got. So they gave the company $1,000. They say, "Oh, you killed an eagle. We'll take one back." And they didn't make them shut down any turbines. They just keep going. So if they keep turning, pretty soon they'll kill all the eagles, and there will be no more fines. That's how your government, the EPA, is handling this. So to answer your question, they don't care. And the Sierra Club,
they don't care either.
Federation, a whole bunch of them are all on board because they're all invested in it themselves. Their money and their officers on their boards are all invested in this.
Yeah, they're being bought off. And when you get a $250,000 salary to be the CEO of the Sierra Club, and your life depends and your livelihood depends, you know what they say, it's difficult for a man to see the truth, and their livelihood depends on them not seeing it.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Going back to the land deal, state land, are these companies leasing state land, or do they actually own it with the tower there?
So they're not going to own it. It'll still be owned by the state, but they're being granted permission to develop portions of that state forest. Run turbine cables, you know, for instance, in my neck of the woods in the Alley-Cat project, there's a woman by the name of Pat Benz. She owns a very narrow, long square of property surrounded by state forest. Don't know how that happened. Maybe it was the person who ultimately gave the state forest to the state, who reserved that to himself and ultimately came into her possession. She has signed up for 2 wind turbines on her property, which are barely enough with the amount of setbacks you need to put them up because her property is so narrow. But there's no electric up where she lives. She's on solar herself. So now they've got to put buried cable through the state forest in order to connect her turbines to the project. So that's one of the reasons why they went to the state Senate and the Assembly and got this little exception in the thing.
Same thing to take over. New York State Lake Erie is a federal waterway. But what happens on the bottom of the lake has been given, the federal government ceded that right to control the bottom of Lake Erie to New York State, so it comes under New York State law. So New York State can give away the entire bottom of Lake Erie and you can't do anything about it.
And that's probably what's happening with the project that's slated to be developed there. You know, when you or I think about, you saw on the news that poor guy who he put out poison thinking he was going to poison, I don't know, crows or turkey vultures or whatever, and he ended up killing some eagles. He went to jail. How come the executives of these developers are not going to jail? right?
You get 2 years for possessing an eagle feather. They wash it on my beach.
There you go.
2 years for possessing an eagle feather, yes.
Like you even know that it's an eagle feather. I mean, there are feathers all over the place, right? Yeah.
Every time an election comes up, I get very cynical. And I'll tell you why. My wife and I are snowbirds. We live 6 months here under Hochul, and we live 6 months in Florida under DeSantis.
Wow. God bless you.
Ron DeSantis.
Pack me in your
now,
suitcase.
He's running against a man named Charlie Crist. He will handily defeat him. No questions asked. But years ago, Charlie Crist was elected as a Republican. And as soon as he got into office,
He switched.
his party affiliation, became a Democrat, and everything he said Republican-wise went right out the window.
And apparently the Democrats are doing that.
He ran
Too.
Florida for 4 years as a Democrat, and we all know what they do.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully you're registered to vote up here.
No,
Why not?
because down there we don't have to pay taxes.
Well, you can still vote up here, can't you? Even if you pay taxes down there and spend 7 months out of the year.
As soon as we became legal residents of Florida, we had to surrender our New York State driver's license.
And then you had to not be able to vote either.
Right. I applied for a pistol permit here because we live down in the woods.
Yeah, you can't.
And the only question they asked me is, let me see your driver's license.
And you were a resident
Florida.
in New York.
You can't
Couldn't do
get
it.
one. I said, I live here 6 months out of the year. Doesn't matter. I pay taxes here 6 months out. Doesn't matter. Your legal residence is Florida. Doesn't matter.
Well,
That is true.
well,
The other question we
that's
asked
terrible.
about the state land. What about the forever wild clause we have in the state constitution? Once the state gets land back, or land is given to them, then that land goes under a forever wild clause and cannot ever be developed again.
Well, apparently they did.
So
They're developing it.
Constitution then.
Yeah, well, and didn't the state constitution also have a recently an amendment that passed relative to green things? And on the next ballot, everyone needs to know that on the next ballot, you need to turn your ballot over. So I don't know if anyone's talked to you about that. There are propositions. In my county, there are 2. In your county, there may only be 1. The proposition number 1 is a green energy. It's essentially AOC's version of the Green New Deal here in New York. It is going to be devastating. You know, no ability to build houses with, you know, propane heaters or natural gas. I mean, it's all going to be electric. And, you know, I'm going to sound like an incredible cynic here. When I went to law school 30 plus years ago, I really strongly believed that we were a nation of laws and that there was simply, you know, no way that government could be corrupt and the like. And I've had just an incredible education over these last 3 decades as to just how naive I was about that. So think about this. If we're forced to go to electric, all electric everything, what happens when there's not enough electricity? You're going to be rationing electricity, just like what's happening now in Germany. They're shutting down. Yeah, well, now California, the day after they said we can only have electric vehicles, you know, things were shut down and like they were told they couldn't charge their vehicles. So who's going to have control then over our ability to transport ourselves, to leave, to meet, to see each other, to worship, to go shop, to go to work? We'll become a nation of conditional privileges and not a nation of rights. And I firmly believe, and call me crazy, call me conspiracy theorist, that this whole renewable energy agenda is part of a larger scheme to deprive us of our freedoms. So maybe I'm crazy. Yes?
That little escapade last winter when 95 was shut down for 2.5 days because they couldn't have, what would happen to those people out there if they had all electric cars? They wouldn't run, they couldn't go.
So guess what would happen? You would get a electric car with a gas-powered generator, many of them, to have to go. You go to the front of the line, you'd power up that person, it takes 7 hours. Next person, people are going to be freezing in there and dying in their cars. Which is why you'll be told you can't travel. on the highway during these hours. You can't travel if you don't have this kind of charge. And by the way, you're not allowed to charge your car because there's not enough power on the grid, and we'll have rolling blackouts.
That's right.
That is what we're heading towards. Money.
It's all control.
Money and control.
Want to control? China owns all that shit.
And I think they saw how easy it was during the pandemic. Again, whether you believed COVID to be a national horrific disease that was going to kill everyone, or whether you think it was a scam or it's somewhere in the middle, that whole concept was an experiment in how malleable we are, how soft we've become as a nation, and how much of our rights we're willing to give to the government and how much we're going to let them kneel on our neck. That is what it was.
Has there been any consideration, because my belief is that these wind turbines only last about 20 years, and they are
less than that.
Yeah, the majority of it is made out of material that cannot be recycled.
Right. So did you see the new article that wind turbine blades can be made into gummy bears?
What?
Yes. Would all of you sign up to have recycled wind turbine blades become the new sweet treat that you feed your grandchildren? That is what was in a recent journal, that it's being made with a resin.
Materials.
People will believe this stuff. I mean, look at what they believe now that CNN spoons out to them every day. There's no crisis at the border. The border's under control. The border's closed. Really? 200,000.
10 weeks.
Right, 9 weeks. Fingerprints, right? It's just, people are, they don't think anymore. And you know, we're churning out a bunch of kids, this new generation of kids. They don't question. They are not resilient. They're not resourceful. They are spoon-fed all sorts of stuff that they believe, and they're all also progressive liberals. So we have our work cut out for us. In the back.
2 questions. Why don't the Amish vote? And as for election observers, is it possible for them or other people to know on election day who has already voted by other means and how?
Other means. The only way you can know who has voted is if you have an election observer, and they don't have to stay there the whole election. They can be appointed, as long as they have the observer form and they hand it at the beginning of the election at 6 a.m. to the main person at the election site. They can come and go. I've done this myself. Come and go, and I come and I say, I need to take a picture of your thing. I need to see the 25 people, you know, you've 25 voters to come in, I need to see the pictures. And then I come back and it's now up to 57, I take another picture, and then I compare it to the list. That is the only way you can know in real time who's voting and not.
We don't have books anymore.
List as who voted already by absentee or early voting.
So there may not be a book, but they're supposed to keep a list of people who vote. Voter number 1, voter number 2. You don't do that?
We don't.
We do it in Cattaraugus County. We have the pads too, but we keep the list.
When you go to vote, I just took a class on this.
Okay.
You go to vote, you sign in, and then it checks it, and it says if you had a mail-in ballot, sorry, you can't vote. Okay. That tells you that, or if your name has already been used.
Appeared.
Yeah.
Okay.
It'll tell you right away, because it'll be on.
But what we need to know is who has not showed up to vote, who has promised the candidate.
But he was asking about
Double voting.
Oh, double voting. Oh, okay.
That doesn't really work either when you come in late with mail-in votes, or people harvest ballots and bring them in, and then
they're not counted for several days.
So you got to accept them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go back to I didn't ask my question clearly. I'm not asking about double voting.
No.
What we were talking about was election observers.
Right.
Who come and say, okay, now who has voted? We need to get other people out to vote.
Okay.
Some of those people who do not come into the voting place on election day have already voted absentee or have voted.
But we know that. We know those who have absentee ballots because you can go to your commissioner.
Not who has absentee ballots. We want to know who has voted.
Okay, that's hard to do because they don't open the absentee ballots until after the election has closed.
What about the people who voted early? Can we know?
So yes, I get that list. So when I'm running a candidate, like right now I'm running the candidate for town supervisor in my town. I'm helping her. She made her own decision to run, and I'm helping her run. I will say to the election commissioner, who's the Republican commissioner, I'll say, please produce the list of early voters, and she produces the entire list, and early voting ends before the real election begins, right? So I get that list. I know exactly who's shown up, Most of the time I know exactly how they voted because I know are they for wind, are they against wind, what have you. I also get the list of people who have requested an absentee ballot, and then I get the list of people who have returned the absentee ballot. And then I know who still has an absentee ballot. And if they haven't returned it and they're in town, I go and get them and make them come to the, because some people request it just on the thought process that they're not going to make it, right? I have a woman in my town who works at Roswell. She never knows when she's going to be mandated. So she gets an absentee ballot each and every time. If she's not mandated, she comes home and she votes. If she is mandated, she fills out the absentee ballot and it gets handed in.
Okay, we got 10 minutes. Ginger's got to go all the way back to Cattaraugus County tonight.
That's right. I want to answer your question about the Amish. So there are some Amish communities that vote, particularly those in the Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania. And it depends on what order they are. The less conservative they are, the more likely they are to vote, especially if they feel that there are issues that will threaten their way of life. Very important that they've showed up to vote when it's been schooling, where their kids were going to be compulsory schooled in public schools and they weren't allowed to continue their own schooling. They all registered to vote and they showed up to vote. They've showed up to vote when people are telling them what they have to put on their buggies or whether or not they need to have poop holders behind their horses. There have been communities that are organized to vote. The very conservative orders, which are the ones that we have here, the Schwartz and Truber Amish coming out of Ohio, some of your other older orders in Leon, Conewango, they actually, their religion has them separating from other societies. While they'll talk to you and while there may be some interaction, they are in the way of God, and their belief system is that they should not take part in the larger politics of English culture and in government. So yeah, they just don't vote.
It depends on who the bishop is.
You're right.
That is ruling the district, because I just spent a week in Lancaster,
Yes.
which I like to visit frequently. And that's Trump country down there.
Oh yeah, they came out, they had them on their buggies and everything, yeah, yeah.
And in that election, they organized and voted.
Yep.
A large vote of Amish.
I wish we could get ours here to do it. I've spoken to them numerous times about it. I've spoken to the bishop about it. And they just, even though it's like it's in God's hands. Well, it's like at some point, you know, God's sending you a message here. You need to help us help you, right? So
The FBI went into that Lancaster, where was it? Down in Pennsylvania. They raided that one farm, said they couldn't, you know.
oh, right. This was the individual who was growing growing food and not organically.
They
Yeah.
weren't allowed to give it out. It was Amish. They went into it.
It's unbelievable. Again, more government overreach. Yep.
Since you're on the IDA in Cat County, because we talk about the IDA in Chautauqua County quite frequently.
Yep.
Are they all set up the same throughout the state?
Yes.
Same procedure? You're obviously elected, but who do they actually answer to?
The legislature.
Yes.
Every county legislature or the board of directors can, at any point, remove the entire IDA and replace the entire IDA with people of their choosing.
So they can do that because
They can.
I
could be removed tomorrow if my chairman were mad at me.
Because, you know, in Chautauqua County, we have the assistant county executive, or whatever his title is. He runs the IDA for the county. But there's never any pushback from anything.
Mm-hmm.
But what the IDA is doing, they've funded a lot of projects badly, but it seems like there's no accountability.
No one goes back and audits.
Between the winners and losers.
Yes.
Sounds like you have better control in Cat County.
Oh, we're going to have better control than that. The days of cowboy projects and people making promises is not going to happen, at least while I'm on the IDA. We are going to look at these projects. We put a moratorium right now on solar and wind so we can go back and look at projects and see if the representations made in the applications and in the pilot agreements have been adhered to. So you said you were going to produce 7 jobs. Did you? Were they full-time equivalents? Did they have benefits? Where do those people live? Are the jobs with people in Chicago, sitting in a wind, company's headquarters, playing on a computer? Or are they here, boots on the ground, citizens of our county that you've employed? We need to know that.
So it's up to us, as residents of this county,
to agitate.
Push back to our legislators.
Absolutely.
You've got to be accountable to see what's going on at that level.
And to ask them. I mean, all of these documents should be available on their website. So they have something called a UTEP.
If you've ever looked at the IDA website online for Chautauqua County, it is not up to.
It's not a study of clarity? Well, you can FOIL the documents. They are a quasi-public institution. They are subject to FOIL, the Freedom of Information Law. If you want to do FOILs, just, you know, go to the Committee on Open Government in New York. It tells you exactly how to do a FOIL. It tells you how to figure out who the FOIL officer is. It can be a simple phone call. Guess what? You can attend the meetings. You know, and this is the thing. If you want to know what's happening, and if you want to hold people accountable, the best thing to do is go sit in the room and stare at them while they're making these decisions. Nobody does it. Nobody attends our IDA meetings. Nobody does it. Yes?
I lived in Chautauqua County most of my life. I moved actually to East Randolph.
Yay, Cat County!
This is and I come here because I love
this group of people, right?
I have not found this in Chautauqua or Cattaraugus County.
No?
No.
Oh, we're replete with them. We have pockets of patriotism everywhere.
That's one of the, like when my friend Mark here was telling me that you're going to be here, I'm like, I gotta go. I gotta
Yeah.
go.
So Randolph is hugely, hugely patriotic. Our chairman's from Randolph.
I have several friends that were just looking for a place, and we want like everything you're saying. I got friends who like tell me how the meeting goes because they've been wanting to come here too because we have not seen this.
I think it's good to come wherever you can come, and if it's closer here, come here.
I mean, I have property in Chautauqua County too, so and I work in Chautauqua County. But how can I support you, and how is there a way, like someplace I can go or somebody that we can get to, because there's quite a few of us in the Randolph area, East Randolph area and all that. We're starving for this type of a group.
Isn't there a coffee group that's in Randolph every day? They go to the coffee shop.
Everybody's so hush-hush. I don't hear anything. You just see, like,
I know there's a huge group of preppers in Randolph. That I know. Like preparing for the second revolution. They're very, very cool people. So I would suggest, this is just an idea, come here, continue to come here, because I think honestly the more times you surround yourself with people that are like you, you'll keep your head on straight. But come to the right thinkers, which is always followed by the right drinkers. So we have the thing, and then we drink. It's at Good Times in Olean. It's an hour away. It's probably worth the drive. You will connect with people. We have people who come from Pennsylvania and from this county as well. Maybe we should start sending some people to your group here. So again, it's about staying connected and knowing that we're just not alone. We're not just little pods of, you know, anarchy in upstate New York.
Gathering of ideas.
Yes. So it's always a Monday. It was just this week. I think it's the 19th or something next. If you take my email afterwards, I'll give it to you. I will connect you to Connie Wolfinger and to Nate Smith. He owns all the Worth Smith hardware stores. They are the founders of Right Thinkers, and they'll be able to even connect you with people that they know from this area too. And that's how you get your legislators to listen. Show up, be loud, be vociferous, bring signs, email them, call them. I mean, all of their contact information should be on their site. Start reaching out to them. People start, you know, retracting when they feel like there's pressure.
Roy, last question.
Ginger, have you heard of the U.S. Preventative Services Task Force?
Yeah.
Well, it's a new program, and they're requiring psychological testing of every person under 65. And if you report that you had some sort of psychological problem...
Oh, this is the anxiety thing that Karen was talking about, okay.
It's just important to warn people not to give any information that they can use against you, because this is going to be a political mechanism,
So
especially children, because they're saying children
all children are anxious at this point. Who wouldn't be after going through the last 3 years? The mental health in our kids is criminal, what's happened over the last few years. So when I go to the doctor, I don't know if anyone else has known, I go to the doctor in Buffalo. It's because there aren't too many doctors down in my way. And the first thing I'm given every time I walk in is a survey. Does everyone else get that survey? It asks me, how do I feel? Am I happy? Have I been depressed? Am I thinking of killing myself? Do I own any guns? You know, all of that. Yeah. They get a big happy face from me, like life is grand.